Whenever I step outside, Vanni is hard at work outside and you always hold his hand. The task that we started yesterday divided between him and me. Instead of sitting on the sidelines and observing, get your hands filthy and unleash your creativity. A bike for every occasion is in the works. It seems like everyone is constantly working. And guess what? For the past decade, we have been dealing with issues similar to this. Paul Teutel Jr. lost everything in a horrible family quarrel after creating the hit TV show Orange County Choppers. A single dollar was what his dad requested. $500,000, 0 cents from his own son. He forced his brother to choose a side. You and your dad used to be very close, but then something happened. He let you go, you know. He did, in fact. It was challenging while it was happening, but looking back, it was the best choice. Paul realized the true cost of their infamous quarrel when he had children of his own. I have come to accept and understand my own father much more since having my son today. The tragic truth about why he hasn't had Thanksgiving with his dad in 15 years is revealed by the man who built some of America's most renowned motorcycles. The majority of children in the mid-1000s, 980s preferred to play video games, ride bikes, or watch television. Contrarily, Paul Teutel Jr. considered something entirely different to be entertaining. At the tender age of 12, he toiled away in the hot and chaotic Orange County Ironworks. Paul was sweeping the floors of the workshop of metal shavings and providing adult men with tools to help them weld steel while other kids played at the beach. Before that, he would visit his dad's construction site and treat the scrap metal as if it were a toy. He transformed ordinary objects into works of art by arranging them into miniature sculptures. Everything changed when they saw it early on. Paul possessed such composed accuracy as a welder that even the more seasoned men admired him when he was just 14 years old. Beyond the basics, he picked up a wealth of knowledge. Additionally, he mastered the art of maker thinking. But there were times when the shop wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. His father, Paul Sr., had a reputation for being harsh and cruel to his son. He was frequently more severe with him than with anyone else. No one could let Junior off the hook for all of his blunders. Nothing would go right without an ear-piercing public scolding. It was unfair in the eyes of some, but Sr. believed it would fortify him. Over the years, they became increasingly estranged. The show did a lot of damage to the family, in my opinion. While Paul Jr. was more of an artist who preferred straight lines and intricate details, Paul Sr. preferred brute force and traditional methods. One summer, Jr. reshaped a fence to make it more sturdy and attractive. After initially declining, his dad eventually agreed and went ahead and used the design covertly. That was the defining moment. The atmosphere was respectful, but there was constant back and forth. While his classmates were cramming for math exams, Paul Jr. opted to do something else. In order to study metals while in school, he enrolled in a program. He became proficient in reading blueprints, welding, and locating steel stress points. He had a unique ability, according to his teacher. He could sense the motion of metal even before touching it. The junior spent countless hours after class perfecting each cut and join. He was confident in his abilities, regardless of his academic background. Improving his skills was all that was required. Upon returning to his dad's shop following high school, he was no longer the youngster who was sweeping floors. He was an accomplished craftsman who could both speak like an expert and create aesthetically pleasing items. At the tender age of 19, Paul Jr. had already assumed leadership of the fence section at Orange County Ironworks. It's a huge task. The revenue it generated was nearly 50% of the total. Jr. deserved it, even though most people would assume it was due to familial ties. By updating the store, he gave them more options in terms of style. His designs were so well known that people were willing to wait longer and pay more for them. Not only that, but he was also responsible for supervising a crew of much older workers. There were some war veterans among them, and there were also some who were initially skeptical, but eventually even the most vicious ones admitted that he was right. What are your thoughts on this? Will you be utilizing an Indian rationale? He transformed a run-of-the-mill metal shop into a legendary establishment. To be respected in that way, you must exert yourself. However, something remained amiss. Years of building fences and stairs made Junior feel trapped. The creation of a living, moving thing was his ultimate objective. He secretly began sketching motorcycles in an old notebook after a long day on the job, and that was the spark that ignited his creativity. His dad got back on his bike about the same time. It was merely a friendly request, but Sr. wanted Junior's help making one. But when Paul Sr. saw his son's drawing, he was shocked. It was both technically challenging and creatively rewarding. On that particular day, Sr. turned to his son and declared, "Let's build bikes for real." By for real, he meant as a business, not merely leisurely. More than just bikes, they had a much larger issue: the length of time that had elapsed since they last laid eyes on one another. With the help of approximately $175,000, 0 cents, from the family's ironworks business, Orange County Choppers was born. However, it was unfair, or the scene received 20% and Sr. kept 80%. That wasn't crucial just yet. In a chilly basement, all they had was a dream and some tools. However, word got out about the bikes they made after only a short while. For their debut, True Blue, they stayed up late welding and used blue paint with white flames. A chilly shed in upstate New York couldn't possibly have produced that. It appeared to have originated from a prominent building. When it was brought to Daytona in 1999, people were shocked. They had gone from unknown to famous. It was challenging, but they succeeded. In 2000, they were manufacturing bicycles in a cramped and chilly garage. Problems arose due to a lack of funds, broken tools, and sellers demanding upfront payment. Even though he slept on a couch in the shop, Paul Jr. frequently worked 18-hour days to keep to his schedule. It wasn't for fun. They were constantly engaged in fierce, shouting battles for survival. Every bike they sold was barely profitable for them. It was not necessary for them to continue, but they were unable to halt. After that, in 2002, there was a call. Craig Peligian, a television director, became interested in their bikes after reading an article about them in a magazine. He searched for a fresh television program. Upon answering the phone, Paul Sr. uttered the words, "What the hell do you want?" A show about restoring bikes from junkyards was pitched by the producer. It was immediately turned off by the senior. He boldly stated, "We build them from scratch." The deal narrowly avoided collapse until the producer returned with an improved proposal. They would capture the authentic process, complete with conflicts, on film. The concept was unpopular with Paul Jr. He feared that the presence of cameras would exacerbate the situation. A 5-page letter he wrote to his dad read, "They'll make us look like fools." The contract was impolite. $5,000, 0 cents each episode, limitless camera retakes, and lighting so hot it melted their welds. The creators of the show considered calling it Family Friction at one point. Paul Jr. was on the verge of leaving, but they were compelled to sign for the funds. Once American Chopper debuted on March 31, 2003, everyone was in the dark about what came next. It only took 3 shows to become a phenomenon. The audience size exceeded 3 million viewers weekly. Suddenly, they weren't just bike builders, they were superstars. Visitors came from far and wide to check out their little store. Many products were sold out. Discovery Channel made $13 million from that debut season. In order to stay up, the Teutels relocated to a massive $12 million 0 cents structure. Initially, Paul Sr.'s fury piqued people's interest. However, Paul Jr. maintained their attention. As long as they could watch him develop, his fans were unconcerned about the problems. The ideas that Jr. had were as precise as magic, calm, concentrated, and unhurried. A video of him building a gas tank, completely silent, became one of the most popular videos of all time. The number of students enrolling in welding programs increased in the United States. People referred to it as the Polly effect. Everything changed when the Black Widow entered the picture. Not only was it a bike, but it also had a message. It took 167 hours of pure skill to make the wheels and gas tank out of spiderweb. 15,000 people packed into a theater in New York to witness its premiere. The police had to use force to control the mob. Model kits, clothing, and video games were all soon on the market. There was a purchase of over 280 model kits in only 6 months. Thus, OC became more than simply a store. It became a brand. In June 2003, when Paul Jr. completed building the fire bike, it was more than just another helicopter. For his career, it was a watershed moment. He was creating more than just a motorcycle. He was honoring the 9/11 firemen who gave their lives protecting our nation. That meant there had to be a message on the bike in every part. The genuine World Trade Center steel beam was a potent component. Instead of delegating the task, Paul welded it on himself. He fabricated the sharp metal component and attached it to the custom-made diamond plate frame of the bike. The final piece was the one that brought the most tears to my eyes. It wasn't, however, the sole issue. The design was so large that he had to completely rebuild the bike's frame. Each of the 343 fallen firefighters had their own symbol painted onto it. Producing something of such substantial weight, both in terms of physical and symbolic dimensions, required a great deal of effort. The New York Fire Department treated the bike crash the following year differently than they would have handled any other accident. They responded immediately and handled the damaged bike with the same tenderness as a bereaved companion. Its significance was that great. The Orange County Museum still has it. It has attended over 248 events. People still go there to grieve and leave notes and memories. Even after all these years had passed, Paul Jr. would reflect on the tragedy and its impact through a new endeavor, a second memorial bike. A lot of people were interested in this one. When it was unveiled on January 20, 2011, bikes weren't the only thing there. The leader of the 9/11 memorial and New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg were among them. Paul made not one but 2 incredible bikes in response to an invitation from Memorial Board member Daniel R. Tishman. We kept one as a memorial and gave away the other to help fund it. All proceeds from the in-person and online ticket sales went to support the 9/11 Museum. That day, when the cover came off the bike, people started crying. Visitors included couples, retirees, and sightseers. What that machine represented emotionally struck a chord with everyone. The image conveyed meaning without using words. The Huffington Post covered it extensively, so those who couldn't attend were still informed. What was truly remarkable, though, was the intelligence concealed beneath all that glitz and glamour. Paul Jr. did more than make motorcycles appear good. In 2012, he subtly introduced a new approach to the motorcycle industry that revolutionized everything, a tool that allowed him to more easily make smooth, bent forms. He began to use T-splaning. After previously taking more than 40 hours, it took just 15 hours to complete. Using Autodesk to construct an electric bike, that technique was crucial. Quickly after, competing stores began using similar tactics, frequently without properly attributing the work. Then, in 2015, Paul shocked his teammates with an action. He devised a method to make motorcycle frames that were both stronger and lighter. he didn't end there. It revolutionized customs construction in every way. Independently, he mastered the art of G-code writing. CNC tools use a computer language called G-code. He was previously solely responsible for bike assembly, but now he can also operate the machinery. He transitioned from being an artist to a machinist and contributed to the build in both a creative and technical capacity. Problems between Teutel Sr. and his son have persisted for some time. In 2007, Sr. secretly gave Jr. a 20% share in their company while maintaining full control. While Dad handles day-to-day operations, Son adds flair. I thought it was a fantastic idea at first. However, as Jr.'s ideas gained more fame and attention, the balance began to tip. The man responsible for constructing Orange County choppers from the ground up was dissatisfied because Sr.'s traditional work was being overshadowed by Jr.'s wild ideas. Behind the scenes, there was envy. Gripping the object more tightly, the Sr. took hold. Whenever Jr. was tardy or did things his own way, it would spark an argument. The longer it burned, the more difficult it was to extinguish. By 2008, the store had become a bloodbath. The father and son would often quarrel with each other. Being the boss was the main focus. In contrast to Sr.'s desire for obedience, Jr. yearned for freedom to create. The rigid regulations and the creative spirit were incompatible. It wasn't the worst of it, but American Chopper did get some. When the lights went out, Sr. got even meaner. With Kid and others, designer Jason once destroyed his own work in response to one of Sr.'s outbursts. The entire store exhibited extreme caution. The mental damage was so great that not even Mikey, the peacemaker younger brother, could escape it. He appeared depleted, as if years of verbal abuse had finally taken its toll. Afterwards, a brawl broke out. Once again, Jr. was tardy in September 2008 and Sr. snapped. Despite the fact that it was supposed to be a warning, it escalated into a screaming match in front of the entire crew. "But I want to be with my dad," I said. But leaving that toxic relationship was the turning point in my life that led to my personal, mental, and spiritual growth. After breaking free from my dad's control, I developed into my own person. Sr. would not listen to Jr. so that he could defend himself. In Jr.'s words, he was a go-getter. Jr. responded. According to him, OC couldn't function without him. It was that. In his fit of rage, Jr. hurled a chair and a garbage can across the office. Then Sr. snapped. He stormed out after slamming a door. At that very moment, Jr. chased after him and fired him. Not only did their chair-throwing match ruin the furniture, but it also severed any remaining professional relationship between them. Years later it would become funny, but back then it was a complete disaster. As soon as gunfire erupted, chaos ensued. The assembly dispersed. Some individuals refrained from publicly endorsing Jr. out of fear of Sr.'s wrath. People started to fret that, without the maker, their bikes wouldn't have the same enchanted quality. Anarchy ensued on the network as well. In light of Jr.'s contract violation, TLC issued a warning to him after he left the show. He returned for a brief stint as an employee, but that was it. By April 2009, he had already lost the battle. Jr. took it to the next level. He took action to acquire Jr.'s 20% stake because he wanted Jr. to have absolutely no involvement with the company. Jr. was sued by Sr. due to his refusal to sell. Money wasn't the only thing at stake in the courtroom chaos. Power was as well. The elderly person yearned to regain control. He asserted his entitlement to receive Jr.'s shares back by paying $500,000. Subsequently, he initiated legal proceedings and sought an additional $1 million in damages. Orange County Choppers, his own business, was involved in the case on both sides, as you might expect. Jr. refused to give up, even when faced with a cunning plan to force him to leave. The whole mess started with one poorly worded clause in the contract. Without clarifying how to calculate fair market value, it stated that Sr. could purchase Jr.'s shares. In a court of law, such ambiguous language could work against you. When the matter reached the New York Supreme Court in 2010, Sr. was initially granted a favorable ruling.